Welcome to the third installment of my I Love Product Placement video series. So, in the last series I talked a little bit about food, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some more products. I forgot one thing that I really liked, which was Lion King Bubble Bath and Jurassic Park Dinosaur Bubble Bath in the 90s. I think that the Disney Company and Steven Spielberg should bring both of them back. Sure, I'm wondering if any of you agree. So, I never liked Barbie. I wasn't really into dolls that much. Some of them I am. I'm just not really into girl stuff, and I do kind of think in some ways that Barbie gives negative body images to girls. But, like I said, I'm not that politically correct. Let me see. There was this one Barbie doll that I thought was cool, but not so much because she was Barbie, but she had these red sparkly eyes. In the early 90s, they came out with Sparkly Eyes Barbie, who had like sparkly red glitter eyes. I thought the eyes were cool. So, I think it would be cool to put those eyes on other dolls and on stuffed animals. So, and then we could really have some nice merch. So, for what else? Let me see. I just gotta look up what I wrote for this video. Okay. Well, I'm not that into board games or video games, but I'll occasionally play them. There are a couple of board games that I'll play at, like, sort of like, parties where they have board games, and sometimes I'll go to, arcades and play video games. I don't have a console, though, and there are some I sometimes play on the computer, but rarely. However, video games and board games have always been a hotbed for licensed cartoon characters, and I hope that the trend continues. And, of course, you've got all these wonderful fellow furries and other kin out there creating, their own video games and their own board games with, their own characters. And of course, I definitely want that to continue. Now, the one thing about this type of furry merchandising and product placement that is really at the heart of it is that it's really not really so much about profit. Yes, it's a lavish, luxurious collection of stuff. It's basically, but it seeks to minimize its environmental impact and does not encourage just buy the way the current product placement in the capitalist system encourages. Although that's kind of a debate because a lot of people in charge of certain entertainment companies and food companies have sometimes been known to be on the autism spectrum themselves, and they're trying to make a point that the world is much more moderate. It's not that it's not always the people versus the man. Of course, that's really complicated, and I don't really know too much about that, and I really don't care or want to because. But the point of this is that the kind of product placement I do is basically all the products, the food, the clothes, the video games, the alcohol, the pipe mixtures, the bubble bath, the soap, the shampoo, the games, the books, are basically all extensions of there, of course, the jewelry, the shoes, the hats, all the other fashion accessories, too. These are all extensions of sort of my worldview, and that, which I've talked about in my videos on spirituality and science, and, on why I consider autism part of my soul, which is that I really don't care for the belief that some religions have about the world ultimately being formless, and the ultimate goal is to transcend the details and fixations of the earthly world and to, merge with the light and, become one with the power within. I find that incredibly boring and bleak, so basically this merchandise sort of is an extension of that idea that you can have all these, along with different things that you do in your life, different fun activities, different ceremonies, a lot of these things, like I said, all this merchandise that would love to see, happen. Would be basically showing all the details that you could have. And a lot of this merchandise, a lot of this merchandise I would definitely use in rituals and ceremonies. So, and at different holiday and party feasts, yeah. As well as for everyday consumption if it's healthy food. So, so, whereas, a lot of corruption in the current merchandise-driven system it's not always about profit, but sometimes it is. Because, For a while, the extreme radicals have accused the Disney company of using sweatshop labor. However, there's a lot of evidence that it stopped using sweatshop labor 15 years ago, which was ironically around the time that the extreme radical left was making a big fuss about it using a sweatshop. So I'm guessing that they did help expose the fact that the Disney company was using sweatshops, and it was believed that Eisner, the CEO Michael Eisner, was the one running the sweatshops. But not only were the radicals pissed off at Eisner, also many of the artists, often on the autism spectrum, possibly also furries and therians, working for Disney, and probably some of the corporate people, within the Disney ranks who were not all bad, but who also were, little capitalist aspies, thinking about the glitz and glamour of wearing the money, as well as the creativity and the art in the venture. So a lot of them allegedly found out that Eisner was using little kids as slaves to make Disney merchandise, which is actually completely the opposite of what Walt Disney's dream for his company was. Walt Disney, contrary to some other beliefs, he was not a pedophile. That myth has been thoroughly debunked. He was also not only obsessed with money, he was a genuinely creative guy who was an adult with a child at heart. He even said that every adult is still a child at heart, and the goal of his company and his art, his characters, was to bring joy and happiness to children all around the world. And if you are taking children all around the world and forcing them to make your products and treating them like slaves and forcing them to work when they're just 5 years old, that is the complete opposite of Disney's dream for children. So, understandably, not just the PC people, but a lot of people within the company itself were upset about this. So, there is some good evidence that, right after the radical left exposed it, the people within the company deposed Eisner, and then they elected a new CEO, and the sweatshop stuff stopped, right? The sweatshop activity stopped after that. So you can never really be sure about all these global things because the world is such a vast, huge, indescribably huge, incomprehensible place. So unless you're there at every single factory, every single farm, every single, production facility for every single corporation, and small company and medium company for that matter, because not all medium and small companies are really good or perfect. That's a little known fact that the radical left tends to sometimes ignore. But what it is that, you can't, unless you know every single company's, all their factories and all their production facilities all over the world, you really don't know what exactly is fair trade, what exactly is sustainable. There is some pretty good evidence, and there are some companies that are pretty honest about and show it openly. But it's always something that it's hard to really know for sure. So, however, I have seen some good evidence that after that expose of Disney using sweatshops, the whole spirit of Walt Disney's original dream kicked that in the butt, and went back to promoting peace and happiness for all kids around the world, including kids at heart who are now grown up, instead of abusing and enslaving them. So, but in spite of that, there is still a lot of corruption, there's still a lot of greed, there are still sweatshops. You can't really always be sure which companies use them, and the fact is that a lot of Disney and other merchandise, is not completely environmentally friendly. If it's plastic, it's made of fossil fuel. Although there are new biotechnologies that can create renewable plastic out of things that don't pollute. Now, bioplastic out of corn is not a good idea because there are people who are starving, and that takes away food from the hungry. The corn is often grown with pesticides, so biofuel is not the best thing if it's made out of what could be food, but you have other kinds of biofuel, and you have other kinds of materials that can be pollution-free and used to make the plastic for Disney toys. So until the larger merchandising industry cleans up everything that's bad, which there still is a lot of bad stuff about it for the environment, for workers, for but and also just for wanting people to buy stuff instead of art and theater. My merchandising plans, my plan for this whole merchandising, these merchandising ideas is not about just about buying. It's not just about profit or about, having tons of stuff to show off and, thinking you're better than everyone. There's a large theatrical aspect. It's all about art, and it's largely about an extension, like I said, of my details, fixations, the things that I find meaningful. I would consider the whole idea, the far left idea, to completely dismantle the product placement and merchandise driven idea and replace it with complete simplicity to be sort of analogous, like an analog to the kind of belief system in which earthly details like the the physical world, mundane details and fixations don't matter, and they're distraction from truly becoming a spiritual being and transcending. And the goal is to transcend that and to get beyond the flesh and to merge with the light and be formless, with the ultimately formless, nirvana. So that is, or whatever the religion might call it. But whereas that is what the extreme radicals like Rethinking Schools and the the Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood are hoping for in saving the world. But my approach to it is different. My approach is more similar to my take on spirituality, which is more about enjoying the fixations, the details, the earthly pleasures of life. So, while still believing in an afterlife, but also doing the same stuff in the afterlife instead of going to, merging with the light and your soul being a formless, glowing light and stuff. So, the merchandising stuff I think of would definitely be sustainable. It would not, it would reduce its environmental impact. It would not treat its workers like slaves or treat workers badly. The workers would make the stuff because they want to and they're proud to make it, and it would not be made out of fossil fuel or environmentally unfriendly material. So the factories that produce it would all be, clean, in the way they make it. So that is basically I'd love to hear your ideas. In the previous video, I'd say I'd love to hear your ideas for food, for alcohol, for toys, and for clothes. And now I couldn't think about any other things, but now I've thought of them. I'd also like to hear your ideas for shoes, hats, and other fashion accessories, jewelry, makeup. Let me see. Video games, board games. New art and books, and possibly movies. Let me see. Sorry about that. Furniture, even. Bubble bath, shampoo, soap, other bath products. So, and if you think of anything else, then you can put it there. Now, of course, I do want to say, when thinking about creating this merchandise, if you have any ideas, I do ask one thing, that you please do not suggest that they be made out of environmentally unsafe material. No petroleum at all, unless it's like recycled petroleum that's cleaned up by a recycling process. If you have any ideas, make sure that the ideas you have for making them are all made out of renewable, non-polluting materials. And I've got to do some research on the different materials that the world has plenty of, and how to not exhaust the world's resources or destroy open wilderness in order to get this. But because I think that might be a little bit easier to do that part, because if you're spiritual, you don't really need that much stuff. I'd say, details, yeah, but a lot of the details I like are more doing things and, being something. Like I can be, as a other canon theory, and I can be any form that has, any creature that has a tail, and I mainly take one shape, which is my human self with a tufted tail, but I have all the other forms that have a tail too. So, yeah. So it's less about having lots of stuff and hoarding it just as a status symbol. Of course, a lot of spiritual people feel, and myself included, feel if we overly focus on hoarding stuff and just on the accumulation part of material items, our souls kind of hurt, and it doesn't really feel good for the soul. That's my experience. I feel if I look at a catalog too much and I fixate too much on wanting all the stuff in the catalog, my soul starts to hurt because that is a distraction from the spiritual reality. But stuff itself and details and fixations and earthly physical details are not. So this so that's it for now.